So when I wrote my testimony, when my parents accepted a plea deal, one of the things I wrote when I was 14 was, if this saves one other victim or one other girl from going through hell, then this is worth it for me. So in 2020, when I received the phone call notifying me that he's eligible to have his so-called lifetime probation lifted, and I went to court on the third Friday of the month, because that's sex offender release day in Arizona, and I had to reface him. It was that moment where I realized how bad this was, and that this is not about me. This is about exposing the gaps in the system and the current loopholes that exist, because I'm living this. And if this is what I'm living, how many other victims are living this way?
She's truly a breath of fresh air. Tracey ignites dreams. And when you walk away from a meeting with Tracey Martin, you walk away with what I call a ripple effect.
And the type of energy that was radiating from her was like a ripple effect. I never met someone like her before, and I knew that her intentions were pure, and she spoke nothing but the truth.
Check in with Tracey. Do the work. You got this.
Welcome to TLM Nation. I'm your host, Tracey Martin. This podcast exists to make you think and ask questions, to amplify the voices of Gen Z and those that are doing good out in the world, to lift the veil on some truths that we all need to hear, and to have transparent conversations that lead to change. It is time to be bold. TLM Nation podcast starts now. Hello and welcome back to TLM Nation podcast. I am super excited for the show today for a multitude of reasons. Having a girl in here, which I love. A lot of times we have all the guys talking all the knowledge, but today, not so. I have Kayleigh Kozak with me. And I know you have driven so far to be here and hit all kinds of little obstacles. I really just think it was somebody just kind of trying to keep you away.
I think so too. And it's funny how that happens.
Yes, exactly. We have lots of information. As always, you guys, please leave us messages and DMs and Instagram if anything pops up throughout the show. We're going to give all the information how to contact Kayleigh at the end of the show, as well as in the podcast notes. So I have a question for you. Tell me a little bit about your story and how you got where you are today.
So, like so many others, I am a lot of things.
Yes.
I am a wife, a mom, college graduate, a believer, but I'm also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, category that I never wanted any part of. Someone suffering because of someone else's actions.
Right.
And so because of that, and because of his actions to this day, it has led me to the path that I am currently on.
Okay, and what is the path?
The path is to fight for victims and survivors of sexual and domestic abuse, because it's so crazy. People have said to me pretty recently a lot, this happened to you, let it go. Mm-hmm. It did happen to me, you're right, but it's still happening.
Right.
And that's the piece of the puzzle that's missing, is we're seeing sexual abuse has always been a thing since forever, but we're seeing a full circle of what's happening when it comes to victims turning in their perpetrator, and the perpetrator going through the system and the process of that, and how the system is actually handling these guys now. So I'm currently living out the failures and the loopholes in the system, and it's because of my perpetrator's actions and what I'm going through that I'm on this path.
So how old were you when that happened?
I was 12 and 13, so I was in 5th and 6th grade.
Okay.
He was my PE teacher and my club soccer coach.
Okay. And was it here in Arizona?
It was, yes,
okay.
In Buckeye, Arizona.
Okay. And so what happened after it happened? Did you tell someone? Did you hold on to it? What was that for you?
So I did not. And that's always a tough question, because people want to know, well, didn't you know it was wrong? Didn't your parents tell you if someone touched you it was wrong? Of course my parents told me that.
Right.
But perpetrators prey.
Mm-hmm.
They're perpetrators, mm-hmm. and they're predators, and they prey on their victims.
Right.
So my perpetrator was very intentional. Most sex offenders are, and pedophiles are. They're very intentional and strategic. So he
very
made
calculated.
Every move is calculated. If only we can make people understand that.
Right.
Every move is intentional and calculated. Mm-hmm. So he made it very clear that it was wrong, but it was different. Mm. And so, I was in the Buckeye bubble, I call it. It wasn't a safe zone. And what I mean by that is I knew everyone loved him. I knew that no one would believe me if I was to say something. And so it actually took me getting out of that bubble and being in a place that I felt safe enough to say something. And I didn't even realize I was turning him in when I turned him in.
Really?
Yes, because when I was growing up, I was warned about the scary guy in the van.
Right, as we all were, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are not taught to look for the charming narcissist that everybody loves. That's literally hiding in plain sight. And so I knew what he was doing was wrong. He told me it was wrong. But because he never, there's such a stigma, right? Like, you think unless you're brutally raped, it's less than. And I would downplay and minimize what happened to me because he didn't hold a knife or a gun to my head.
Well, it goes even, not to interrupt you, babe, but it goes even to the fact that they have a way of the mind manipulation to where you end up participating in it, even though you don't want to.
Yeah.
And the way that they do that with the mind of a young person, especially, it's so evil, you know. And that's where I think a lot of times, even parents having conversations with their kids about it, like you said, it's the white guy, it's the creepy guy, it's that kind of stuff. And so when you do, it's like you push that envelope, and then the line gets pushed and the line gets pushed. There has to be a hard no with people and with parents. And I think that's one of the biggest things is that look out for this. But by the way, there are red flags. And when you're that age, you don't know that.
You don't, and you're so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And there's so much of my story that I don't ever talk about because I would need an entire month.
I'm sure.
to tell everyone. But I had just moved across country. I was just entering middle school I didn't know anybody. I was vulnerable anyways. And I felt, at the time, I was
almost
12.
isolated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I felt like my parents had ripped me from all my friends in North Carolina, and we moved back to Arizona because I'm originally from Arizona, out in the middle of nowhere. And I was very isolated, and all I had was soccer. And here comes this coach who knew that we were vulnerable, and my entire family.
Well, they look for opportunities.
Absolutely, they do. And so here comes this new family, and looking back, I'm sure he was calculating his moves before we even got here. And I don't know that, but I would assume off of the things that had happened. And so when I turned him in, we were watching a video, and it was about grooming. I went to Xavier College Prep. So I had gotten out of Buckeye into Phoenix. And everything they described is what happened to me. And I couldn't believe that it was real, because what my parents told me rape or sexual abuse wasn't what they were saying.
Right.
But what they were saying was that this does matter, and if this has happened to you, you need to talk to somebody. And so I remember going up and saying...
So this is when you were in high school?
This was my freshman year. It was actually September 11th of my freshman year.
Okay.
And here I thought we were going to watch a video about 9/11, and it was not. But I was so naive to what I was even doing. I mean, I remember, I can feel it like yesterday, sitting in the waiting room with a guidance counselor, and I was so sure that because he didn't beat me or harm me,
Wasn't
it
violent.
was less than.
Yeah.
And so when I had told her what happened, and she said, I have to call your parents, I begged her not to, because I was scared and I didn't know. And my parents, it wasn't that they did not believe me, but they did not believe that it was him. And I was not surprised by that at all. No one believed it was him, and that he would do the things that he did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So what was the, like, once you talked to your parents, how did it go from wherever he was actually, you know, that you talked to him or they talked to him? Or
So my parents came and picked me up. That's actually kind of a blur for me the rest of that day. And the next day we did a confrontation call. So Arizona has one-party consent, and it was flawless. I mean, it was very much like what you see in like old Law and Order. Like a cold, like the metal table, steel table, cold
sterile
dark room. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and technology. So this was in 2006. So definitely not where it's at today. But they were very specific in the fact that I had to say things a certain way, and he had to respond a certain way, and he had to admit 3 different ways, 3 different times that this did in fact happen.
Okay.
So it was very successful. I think it was a 14-minute call.
Wow.
And he didn't even skip a beat. He went right along with it. I, as an adult, going back to that, thinking about it, I don't know how I did it, and I'm so proud of myself for finding the strength and the courage to do that. But ultimately, that's what led to his arrest.
Okay.
He was arrested 2 days later.
So are you the only one? Or can you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, For that we know, yes.
Okay.
I personally don't believe I'm the only one.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if before my time comes on this planet that someone else reaches out. But per his case, I am the only victim, yes.
Okay, so where is he now?
He is still in Arizona.
Okay.
So not very far from here or Buckeye.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he is now a registered sex offender, right?
He is a registered sex offender, yes.
Okay. Does he still work at the school?
No, so he...
How does that work?
So actually, that's a whole thing. Everything is super layered when it comes
rolls
to
into
this
each
category.
thing,
Yeah. So in Arizona, if a teacher is even convicted of a sex crime, they do not automatically lose their teaching license. It is at the discretion of the board of the district, which is so crazy to me. And I'm sure if you've seen on my social media, this year alone in Arizona, we have, that we know of, 60 teachers this year that are just facing disciplinary action, not even legal action, for sexual misconduct with minors, with students.
So disciplinary action, does that mean that the school
Yes.
takes it on? It doesn't go to the legal system?
Unless it's been reported to the legal system in some way, no. So that's just the 60 teachers that we know about in Arizona in 2023 that are facing disciplinary action within the school.
Wow.
Crazy.
I mean, all districts.
Yeah, just in the state of Arizona.
Do they have, like, is there a way, and maybe you don't know this, but is there a way to, like, are they more public schools? Are they private schools? Is there any
It's
kind
all
of
the way
data
around.
on that?
Yeah, it's.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd be curious to look at the data. I know charter schools are a big hit right now, and that's because you don't have to have a certain kind of degree anymore to get into charter school. So they're definitely being more targeted. And that's the thing. It's calculated. These predators know where to go.
Yeah.
They look for these
The
loopholes.
path of least resistance.
Yes, and where they can blend in the best and where they can flourish in their actions, and they find
So
it.
what do you think was, and this may be a loaded question, but what do you think was the biggest impact? Because I think one of the things, and I have, I have a client of mine who's gone through a very bad rape, and we talk about, she has a brand that's called 50/50, and we talk about, if you put 50 men in a room, or 50 women in a room, everyone knows someone or has been sexually assaulted or has had something. If you put 50 men in a room, nobody knows anybody. And so, she did great, made this, I'll actually tag it in here. It's called 50/50. And so she's trying to raise awareness for this. And it's like, what is the impact? Because one of the things that I work with young girls who do go through this, it's like, you can go to therapy, you can go to counseling, you just go to psychiatry, whatever you want to do. You have to live with this. And I think that a lot of the times why coaching is so different when we work on this is the fact that it's not going to define you, but it is part of who you are. You can't go back and change it. So how do you then move forward and live? You do something with it, which is what you're doing, which is what most women who get to that place are like, I don't want there to be another one. I want people to know exactly how this happened and what happens. And I think it's such a slippery slope with people, especially with the hypersexualization right now of our entire culture, that it's like, well, but it's okay. He's fine. Nothing happened. They push this whole thing. So what was the biggest thing for you, obstacle-wise, to get you moving in a forward motion?
Today?
Emotionally, yeah.
So when I wrote my testimony, when my parents accepted a plea deal, one of the things I wrote when I was 14 was, if this saves one other victim or one other girl from going through hell, then this is worth it for me. So in 2020, when I received the phone call notifying me that he's eligible to have his so-called lifetime probation lifted, and I went to court on the third Friday of the month because that's sex offender release day in Arizona, and I had to reface him. It was that moment where I realized how bad this was and that this is not about me. This is about exposing the gaps in the system and the current loopholes that exist because I'm living this. And if this is what I'm living, how many other victims are living this way?
Great question.
And so, and if this is what I'm living in the limelight and with all the connections, and I don't say that in a bragging way, I say that as I've been very blessed to have the connections that I have.
Right.
What are other people dealing with? Like, if this is my hell, I cannot imagine what other victims are going through and how they're mistreated in the state of, nationwide, but specifically in the state of Arizona.
So is this just, I know that you said like the third Friday, so explain what that is.
Oh gosh, so it's a thing every third Friday of the month, specifically in Maricopa County. The sex offenders have the option to petition the court to modify or terminate the terms of their probation. So there's so many that it's an actual day. It's the third Friday of the month. It's a set hearing. And if their petition is accepted, they get to go to court and plead their case. and they will let
Wow.
them off. The first, you talk about defeating.
Yeah.
I had to reface my abuser after 15 years to ask the judge not to lift his probation, because if he did, I would not have any protection. At the time, that was the only means of protection for me, was the terms of his probation. And so to go into that courtroom and the first 3 offenders had their lifetime probation lifted, I couldn't believe that it was actually happening.
So were people there to like speak out against them?
No.
So do you think that it makes a difference if you go? I mean, not that I know that not everyone can.
Yeah,
But
I think absolutely. I think showing up in person is more than half the battle, and not just in that case scenario. I think testifying down at the legislature, because let's be honest, a piece of paper is a piece of paper. A human right in front of you, it makes you it makes it real.
Yeah.
And the judge at that time said that I'm the second victim in 22 years who's come.
are you kidding?
But I think there's multiple reasons for that.
Yeah.
I think that. Actually, I wholeheartedly know and believe victims are not being made aware of what's actually
I was
going
just
on.
going to say they don't know, because
So
I think
that's
there's stronger people than that.
That's a bigger part of the problem.
Yeah.
Obviously, I understand the trauma, and there are victims who can't, and that's
Right.
okay. And they have the option. You have 3 options. You can do nothing. You can write a letter, or you can actually go in person and testify.
Well, even finding a representative for you, if you can't do that on your own.
You would not believe how hard it is.
Really?
So when I was informed, I didn't have victims advocacy. Nobody reached out to help me. Not one person.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are the top 3 things that need to change in your mind right now? Like right now, if you could put all this out there and say this is a systematic thing that needs to change, what would they be?
We need specifically for Arizona. Are we talking about Arizona specifically?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll stick on Arizona.
Yeah, let's take that animal first.
I know. Let's low-hanging fruit, and then we'll get to the big one. The first thing is we need an overhaul with the criminal justice system and probation. We need true criminal justice reform. I am all about criminal justice reform. I think the whole thing is completely jacked up. However, I think that it's gotten so convoluted and so, like, if you could imagine like a squiggly line, like that's the laws, like the amount of loopholes that exist in the current laws. But probation, particularly in Arizona, they audit themselves. There's no oversight. It's so they have endless opportunities to do what they want to do.
Right.
And I mean, like for example, I had one girl coming at me so hard on TikTok, and she's got a pretty big following, saying that I'm spreading misinformation and inaccurate information because she couldn't find this third Friday information. And I'm thinking, why would they publicize this? They're not going to put this.
Exactly.
They don't want you to know.
We'll just show up and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, you can. It's very public.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is she Arizona?
Well, no, I don't know where she
Oh,
is.
okay.
I invited her. I said, I invite you to come with me.
Awesome.
And yeah. So of course, she keeps going, and social media keyboard warriors.
Yeah,
are out there.
totally.
So I think the first thing is, specifically in Arizona, we need an overhaul with probation because people don't understand how bad it is. And they don't understand that probation has all this power. And when it comes to these offenders, and that no one is holding them accountable for what's actually going on within probation. That would be the first thing. The second thing is, I think that people on all levels of the legal system need to actually have a complete understanding of what's going on. So for example, what I mean by that is, when I tell you there's 3 levels of sex offenders, level 1 being the lowest risk, level 3 being the highest risk, what would you say a level 1 would be?
Well, something that happened to you probably is what the law is probably thinking about.
But as just an everyday citizen, like a low risk level, like a sex offender, what is a crime that they would have committed?
Child pornography?
Like most people would say, like public urination would be like a level 1 sex. Like they're low risk, they didn't touch anybody, they didn't do anything.
They just exposed themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Public indecent exposure.
Okay.
So would you say that was level 1?
I would guess that would be, yeah.
And level 3 would be like rape.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
That's,
You think.
You'd think, yeah. So when I even brought this up to the law enforcement and the prosecutors and everything, I could not believe the way a sex offender is assessed in Arizona. So a sex offender, there's a 19-question risk assessment. I talk about this a lot. I've done new segments on it. I've talked about it on almost every podcast. These 19 questions are what determines the risk level of a sex offender and how likely they are to reoffend. It's a general risk assessment that's used. People don't understand that. They think, so for example, if you have an offender that has 8 counts sexual abuse of a minor.
Okay.
Let's see, luring a minor for sexual exploitation, dangerous crime against a child, imposition of trust. Where should they fall on that sex offender risk level? What would you think?
3.
Yeah, no, they can be level 1.
Really?
Yes. So level 1 sex
Wow.
offenders, here's the kicker, they are not listed on the public website in Arizona.
You're
Your
kidding.
neighborhood research that you do when
Yeah.
you Google, like,
If you're moving to a new location, you want to see, yeah.
level 1s are not on there. So your next door
Wow.
neighbor could have committed multiple counts of child sexual abuse, and they could be a level 1 sex offender. Therefore, they're protected. They will not be on this public website. So,
Wow.
so yeah, we ran a bill last session. We've run it 2 years, actually, that puts an offender that has a dangerous crime against a child, which would be under ARS Code 13705. That's all DCAC. They would be required to be on the DPS sex
Yeah.
offender website, regardless of those 19 questions. And the governor vetoed it.
Katie Hobbs?
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
But my point is that people don't understand because it's low risk level. They don't need to be on there.
No.
Do you understand what a
no.
low risk level offender can
Right.
be?
Right.
And then you have these conversations with our legislators or, people within law enforcement. They're like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense,
No.
but that's how it is.
Right.
So that would be the second thing I would change, would be that we need to make sure that people in office, specifically because ultimately those are the ones who are
Right.
passing these laws
Exactly.
and things, that they have a complete understanding of what actually is going on, not what they assume, the way they assume it is.
Well, it's too legalistic and just, it's like, I like what you said when you show up, it's a person, it's a face,
Yeah.
right? It's like you look at someone that holds an office, if that happened to any one of their family members, that's the thing I've noticed, even like what I've been, until it affects you,
Yeah.
people just don't grasp the magnitude of what this is.
No.
They just really, it's like they see these papers, 19 questions.
Yeah.
They don't, and the thing is like, no, you don't understand. You're supposed to be out ahead of it before it happens to another person.
Well, that's where I'm at, and so we'll get into that, why I pursue what I do.
Yeah.
But we, as a society, specifically when it comes to offenders, pedophiles are the most protected criminals, but we need to start being proactive instead of reactive.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that would be the first pivot into making impactful change, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The third thing I would change right away, if I could have a magic wand,
Yes,
rub my genie
yes.
lamp, would be we need accountability with these prosecutors and these judges.
Yeah.
They ultimately, and it gets so frustrating because so you could have an offender that has class 2 felonies and their charges, they have full blown proof that an offender, you could have videotape,
Yeah.
footage, and that this offender did commit a sexual molestation of a child.
Right.
The prosecutors can allow that offender to take a plea deal and plead down to something such as attempted
Wow.
molestation of a child, which then puts them as a class
So they
3
changed
felony.
they changed the scenario.
Yes, so on the surface you look at these
Right.
things and they look great,
Yeah.
but what people don't understand is it means nothing when they can alter the language and fill in the loophole wherever they want.
Which is what they're doing now
Yeah.
for everything.
There's no accountability.
Yeah.
And so Representative Wynn had a great bill last session. He ended up doing a strike everything. The original bill was if you commit a certain sex crime, I believe it was under 13705, you have to do a mandatory year in prison.
Okay.
Period. It doesn't matter if you're if you were charged.
Okay.
Or maybe it was convicted. Don't hold me to that because
Yeah.
the language changed. He ended up doing a strike everything, which means he took all the language out
Okay.
and reinserted new language.
Okay.
That new language was for the sex dolls that we're seeing because it ain't no blow up sex doll that's happening anymore. These are real life
Yes.
looking dolls that you have grown men essentially raping and filming and profiting. And then you have the FBI and people going in, busting down their doors to catch them. And guess what?
What?
They can't do anything.
Really?
It's a doll. It's not a real person.
But yet they're selling.
Yeah.
They're,
It's bad.
They're selling the,
Yes.
the videos.
Yeah. And I think AI is bringing, we're going to see a whole other wave.
Well, that just the whole pornography industry
Yeah.
in general, I think is that somebody asks me all the time, like, what do you think? I go, it's a sexual trauma, it's hypersexualization, it's demoralization and desensitization of our culture.
Absolutely.
Based upon pornography now is not just opening up your dad's Playboy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's so vile.
Yeah.
You know.
And so but we're going to see a whole other wave with AI.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Oh, yeah.
But he did that. So and the governor actually signed that one, believe it or not, which was,
I'm surprised.
We were all surprised, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because it is. So we're seeing these things, but the problem is that these prosecutors and these judges have all this power, and they're able to manipulate the verbiage within a plea deal, and they know exactly what they're doing.
Right.
So we need accountability within that portion of it as well.
And the bad thing is, and the bad thing too, though, is what you said before. Reactive instead of proactive. The problem is now you're also dealing with human behavior.
Yeah.
We wait until something happens to get, unfortunately. Very few people will put a wall up before someone actually comes over, right?
Yeah.
So I think, no pun intended about the wall. Sorry. But you know what I mean? But it's kind of like it's like people wait.
Yeah.
They wait until the crisis. They wait until whatever happens.
But here's another thing too we're seeing with predators, specifically pedophiles.
Yeah.
And we'll go again specifically to Arizona. They know damn good and well that they can do whatever they want. Like they know they're going to get a slap on the wrist. They know they're sitting with these attorneys, the defense attorneys, and they're like, well, just take the plea deal. You can take lifetime probation. Well,
full well knowing the third Friday you can actually make that go away.
Yeah. And it's usually within 7 to 10 years, and that's what they consider. So it's like a juvenile lifetime. But in the meantime, they're telling these victims and their families at the time of accepting these plea deals, they'll be on lifetime probation. You don't have to, forever. Because you can go ask a child what lifetime means, and they'll say, oh, your life. That's not what they're... In Arizona, there's no legal definition for lifetime.
Really?
Yeah. So they know they're going to get off, and then they know that once that case has been closed, it can't affect if they reoffend again.
Oh, really? So how does that work?
So, or I shouldn't say it can't affect. It can't affect the Sorry, let me rephrase that. If their case is closed and let's say they do their time, they're off probation, they reoffend, that won't be taken into consideration because that case is closed.
So it's like a new beginning. Yeah. For them. Wow.
Yes, and they know that. They know that.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced that the sex offender treatment is more of a sex offender's guide on how to manipulate,
get away with
through
it.
The system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think
and the other thing too, I think just the conversation. It kind of goes back to, and I don't know if you've thought about this or not, but Alfred Kinsey, right? And you go back to the 1956 or 1959 Penal Code, how the whole thing was changed into our system. And it basically, it's very difficult to prove something like this or to even go after someone like this because it's so accepted.
Yeah.
And then you go back to the whole workplace, part of it, the sexual harassment, the Me Too, all that kind of stuff. All those things have just been so vile to the people that it actually does happen to. Yeah. And there's no protection at all.
No, there is far more concern. Well, there is protection for the wrong side.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying.
The pedophiles have all the protection. The victims do not. And it
Right.
is so layered. And I love how you said desensitization, because that is exactly what we're seeing in our society today is the media controls the mind.
Right.
And so we're seeing all of this, and it's to desensitize everyday people.
Well, leading
to
up
what's
to
really
legalized
going on.
pedophilia at that point. That's the end goal.
Oh, I have a whole thing on that. There's a reason that all of this. It's all leading up to diagnose it as to claim that pedophilia is a medical diagnosis, because once, and that will be that the day that happens, we should already be terrified.
Yeah.
Because you cannot discriminate against someone for a medical diagnosis.
Exactly.
And that's fully, I believe that's where they're headed with this.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I mean, and if you look at it, just the whole system, how it's actually built that way. Yeah. I mean, people, and even going into the transgender stuff and even going into the kids and what they're doing with the medical castration and all that kind of stuff, it's like, you think that all this stuff is just isolated. It's every single thing is connected on this.
Yes, very much
you
so.
You can't, if you look at it from a bird's eye view, I don't know anyone with a critical thinking mind that couldn't look at this, even if they didn't experience what you experienced.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I'm so sorry that no one protected you. I am so sorry, Kayleigh. When I hear this, it just, it gets me, because I have 2 daughters, and it's just like, nobody protected you, and so that's always huge with me. But I think the other part of it is you have to start looking at this. It has to be a hard no.
Yeah.
If you're waiting for the legal system to define your moral code, I think we're more lost than what we think we are.
Yeah. And I like that you brought that up, because when I started this, it wasn't a party line for me.
Right.
Because for me, protecting children shouldn't be political, and protecting victims shouldn't be political. And with my law specifically, it has always had bipartisan support.
Right, as it should.
Yeah. I've had a Democrat governor sign it into law. I've had a Republican governor. I've never had any pushback from either side.
And it's called Kayleigh's Law, right?
Kayleigh's Law, yes. However, with these other bills I'm drafting, it has become very, very partisan. And I've sat down with Democrats, and they in Arizona, they refuse to go against their party line. So on the floor in committee, they're saying, we agree with you and we want to vote yes, but my vote's no.
Wow.
Because they won't go against their party line. And where's their morals? They don't have any.
So that's always been my question with whatever industry. Where does your license or your line stop and your morals start? That's the human part that we've gone. When we turned our back on that, we know what's happening within America.
And it was so hard, because I want to work with both sides on this.
Of course.
Because
it's imperative.
Yes, and this shouldn't be a partisan issue.
No.
But it is really hard to sit down and have a conversation with the Democrats for two reasons. They'll tell me to my face, we're with you and we support you and we want to help. And then they'll go on the floor and do the complete opposite. Yeah. But then them trying to defend their reasoning, no, you're either on the side of protecting victims and children or protecting pedophiles. There is no, that is a hard line.
It has to
and
be.
if you stay on the side of protecting pedophiles, you're exposing yourself. And nothing you say, no explanation you give is enough to make anybody believe that you're not on the side of protecting.
No.
That you're on, that
It's
you're
very-
not on the side of protecting
it's
them.
clear.
Yeah.
It's
very
clear
much
at
so.
that point.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting, like the constituents in that, it would be interesting if they knew all this. You know what I mean? I like who, and I've seen people, I don't know if you did it, but I've seen people whenever a law is passed or not passed where they actually say who did and who didn't. You know, and then post it, right?
I
Which is
love
great.
exposing that.
Well, you have to.
Well, and I've got, so affirmation is huge, right?
Yes.
So you take that big breath, like, affirmation is huge. At first, I really struggled and took it personally why these people weren't on board with this mission, because it seems so cut and dry.
It was a personal attack.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, everything I've spearheaded thus far I've personally been impacted by. I mean, there's many other things that need to change.
Right.
And that's why I'm so well versed and educated in it, is because I'm living it.
Right.
But the affirmation that I get in this is, I when you have the devil and God fighting for your energy, you know you must be doing something right.
Oh yeah.
And so for these Democrats, because that's, and I hate to even say that, but that's what it is.
No, you have to call it like it is.
For these Democrats to be so anti what I'm doing, and for them to be coming after me so hard like they are.
Yeah.
I mean, my God. They rescinded a national award and speaking engagement because I said I was disgusted in Governor Hobbs and her veto. That's all the affirmation that I need to know that I am on the right
You're
path.
on the right track.
Like,
yeah.
when
I remember seeing that.
When I am getting phone calls after I'm doing news segments from public officials trying to get me to recant what I said, or trying to get me to do damage control for what I said, and I say, no, you can call and do a follow-up story. Tell them where you stand. They won't, because it makes them look bad.
Right, right.
That's all the affirmation that I need. The
Yeah.
more I'm pissing people off, the better I'm doing.
Oh,
That's
for
kind
sure.
of where I'm at.
No, for sure. I mean, and I think those of us that are on the front lines for any reason, whenever you're under attack, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But your why is so strong, so your commitment is solid.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, and that's why I said when it doesn't affect you, you know, you typically don't fight as hard. You know, it's like me with like different things I've worked with, but you start to realize that you've been given this, unfortunately, you know, and this battle, and you're willing to take it on for so many people that either can't or won't take it on, you know, young girls or whatever's happened. I mean, it's not just girls, it's guys too.
Yeah.
You know, but I think so much of it comes down to using your platform. We were talking before we got started a little bit about social media.
Yeah.
You know, so how has social media either impacted you negatively or positively on this particular path?
I think there hasn't been a positive impact without a negative, or a negative without a positive. I think social media is a great tool, right? And it's just the way of the world right now, like we talked about. And so, we'll use that tweet for example. I simply tweeted. So the bill, this bill we're talking about referencing was SB 1253.
Okay.
And that would have required a registered sex offender with parental rights to notify their children's school of their status.
Okay.
Because that you don't have to.
Right.
So in Arizona, only level 2 and level 3 sex offender have to notify the school in the district which they live.
Really?
Yes.
So they can go get a job where they don't live and nobody knows.
Well, none that they can get a job, but so if they have my kids don't go to school in the district we reside in. So if you have an offender whose children go to a school outside of where they reside, they don't have to notify that school.
Okay.
So, for example, let's go back to the level 1. Level 1s are not on the public registry, and they don't have to notify a school. So now if you have a sex offender who has a child, and they're at a school outside their district, that school has no way of knowing they're a registered sex offender because they don't have to inform them legally, and they cannot look them up on the public website.
Because they wouldn't come up.
Yep. Now, an offender, they're calculated. They're not, the offenders are so smart.
Yeah.
And people they downplay, they underestimate
They disregard them.
Yes. I mean, there's some dumb ones, but most of them are predators, and they're very smart. So they're not going to go up to the front office and say, hey, I'd like to volunteer in the classroom. Can I get a background check? Because they know they're not going to pass. They're going to sneak into the school events where they're not checking people's IDs and backgrounds. Right. They're going to come into the church play or the Christmas plays, or kids go to private school, so I naturally default to that. But that's where they're going to come in. Mm-hmm. And when I sat down with the administration at my kids' school and said, hey, you have to start looking at it from this lens, it was truly an oh shit moment. Really? We have this huge gap here that we need to close. You cannot even go into our school for an event if you don't put your ID through the thing.
Wow.
Because it flags. Because they're not, just like if you have a perpetrator at a church and that's a whole, or a convicted sex offender.
Right.
They're not going to go volunteer in the nursery.
No.
They're not that dumb.
No.
They are going to go somewhere where they can present themselves to be a really great human, win over the people within the congregation. So there'll be something like a greeter.
Right.
Because then they can manipulate.
Well, it's personal at that point.
Yes.
They have a personal communication.
And they can manipulate those that they continue to cross paths with.
Right.
So.
Well, you get that moment kind of like with the guy that, like you're the one that what happened to you, unfortunately. He was a teacher or a coach?
Both, teacher and coach.
So you get someone that has a quote unquote standing, or a reputation. But they're even in a place of authority too.
Absolutely.
So I think that's another violation. Yeah. On top of that.
And that's a whole, I'm telling you, we could go all day. What we're seeing now, what we're seeing more of now being exposed is these predators hiding under titles, entities, brands, labels and logos. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So specifically like within churches, right? I mean, you have these mega churches making very bad decisions.
Yeah.
And they're hiding under their church name. Well, that wouldn't happen at that church. That's
happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're hiding under their and people are so blind.
Yeah.
They won't even consider the fact that it could happen.
Well, I think for some people, if they knew, they would then have to do something.
Yes.
And I think very few people, it's like they love to stick their head in the sand. I heard that, but I don't know. I don't want to go against it. And we're in such a culture of you have to be kind and you have to be accepting, you have to be tolerating. Yeah. And no, no, you don't. And that's why I'm saying that hard line.
Yeah.
You have to put a hard line. So how does this Kayleigh, this person, and Kayleigh, with family and kids and as a wife and that, what's the difference?
I'm always so, I call it passionate. My husband says I'm aggressive because I just...
No, you're passionate. There's a difference.
I just go...
That's the masculine feminine. No.
I just
you're
go
passionate.
all in with everything.
Me too.
And so it is, I have had to learn a balance. And so I think even for my family, this was all an adjustment. For my immediate family, my extended family, and close friends, because I was just a stay-at-home mom for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a lot. I have 5 kids. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
To go, even if I would have gotten...
What are their ages?
Oh, God. 13, 10, 9, 7, and 5.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's a full-time.
And I have 1 boy, so I have 4 girls.
Oh, my God.
Pray for me.
I will.
And we're going into teenage years.
Yes, I've done that. I coach hundreds of teenage girls.
Oh, gosh. So not to go off track here, but I look at my 13-year-old daughter.
Yes.
And I was younger than her. Like, by the time I was her age, the abuse had already stopped.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe, like, for me, that was probably one of the hardest things that I've gone through as an adult. Is
Yeah.
looking at my daughter at the age I was when I was sexually abused.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a little side note there.
No, you do, because you see yourself in that moment.
And
you can't get away from it.
What did a 30-year-old man see in a 12-year-old little girl?
Mm-hmm.
It just perspective. It makes it real.
Yeah.
Because I did minimize and downplay what happened to me.
Of course.
For most of
Well,
my
we all
life.
did. We always, I'm fine. Oh,
Yeah.
it was just maybe I, for sure.
So looking at her it was hard for me, but it wouldn't matter if I would have got if I would have gone and worked at a restaurant,
It wouldn't, no.
it would still would have been an adjustment for our family because I had always just been a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
So it has been an adjustment on top of the fact that so I think I don't talk about my story a lot because for me it matters, but it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
It's
bigger than any one person.
It is. It's so much bigger. And so it's such a small part. And it's my why, but it's not the full force behind why I'm fighting for these new laws and these changes in the system. But I'm trying to also heal from, I never had therapy or help when I was younger.
Yeah.
I didn't. And there wasn't a lot for me, and I wish I would have because I am having to go back and work on little Kayleigh. To heal from that.
But people don't realize that the trauma happens to the body holds on to it, and it doesn't forget. It's a cellular, it happens at a cellular level.
It's oh gosh, again, I would love to talk with you all day. You have body, to lots of things, you have body responses, and that's like when you get that flood of heat that comes over you, and you don't even know why your body felt like that, because we're dead from the neck down, essentially, right? And my therapist would tell you, she would probably argue I'm almost too connected.
Yeah.
Like my brain and my heart are almost too connected. And I am actually, I think with my heart, like I feel through everything.
You're also a believer. So what's the difference between, like reality and your belief is 18 inches, your head to your heart. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. And the reason why
can be though.
But here's the reason why though. The heart is the driver of action.
Yeah.
And so the problem is that we have too much inaction.
Yeah.
So if you can have the mental fortitude of directing the action, which is a different way of looking at it than a traditional modality will. I mean, I'm very action based when I work with people. So you start to realize that the heart is the passion, is the fire, is the drive. So if someone's numb and they're only intellectualizing everything,
but they're not feeling it,
very rarely will they be driven to take action. And that's why I disagree with that to a certain extent for that reason. And I think that when you have that, it's like we become the person that we needed.
Yeah.
I've done that. Everyone I know that is like in a position like you are, or a leader of some sort, or behind some sort of a movement, you realize that you're becoming the person that you wish that you had in your life. So, and I think that's why we're really good at it. Because somebody asked me that, I'm like, I want to be a great mom, a great wife, a great grandma. Yeah. I go and a great coach, because I want the person that I needed throughout my entire life, right? Yeah. And so that's why I disagree with that, because I think that intellectually, yes, if you're categorizing everything and becoming very much that legalistic mindset. But the only way that anything gets done, especially within this kind of a system, is to have the passionate part of the driver. Or your husband can say aggressive, whatever. I mean, I get that too. But the thing is that that's fine, because if not you, then who?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I just think sometimes if you let one or the other lead, it can get you in a bind. So I'm very intentional in learning how to connect the two.
Which is self-regulation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's because I've learned, though, I will overreact and have a body reaction because of what happened to me. It's something today that I'm reacting to, that I'm actually having a reaction to, that happened to me from back then. I can give you a bunch of examples because I've learned to become in tune through therapy. Right. But I'm healing little Kayleigh while also trying to heal myself now, while also trying to be a mom and pick up the pieces and things. And
you see things through a specific lens too, and that's why when you look at your daughter, you see that moment in time where you were in. And the thing about it too is that mentally your EQ, you stop sometimes growing in some of those areas where the trauma happened. So that's kind of when you're saying healing little Kayleigh, that's really what you're doing. You're giving her permission, to kind of move past it. And I think that's the work that you're doing, not only for yourself, but it will make you so successful in your pursuit of what you're doing, because you can see everything from every layer, because you are living it.
Yeah.
It's very different than someone sitting on a legislation floor and trying to figure this out, and they have I'm sorry, I got nothing, I can't, sorry.
Well, they tune it out because
Yeah.
they don't have a feeling either way.
Right,
I mean, it's not, at that point, it's like, is this gonna help me or harm me in my career?
My
It's kind
career.
of what it comes down to then
Yeah.
at that point, when it's real for so many.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had more men disclose to me than I have had women.
Mm.
And I always like to put things into perspective. So, like when I flew to Wisconsin and testified for my law, I was there 27 hours. And so I had done the math, and in my trip here, approximately, I don't remember exactly how many it was, but 2,100 people have become victims of sexual assault in this short trip here.
Wow.
And it puts it into perspective,
Yeah.
or just take a look around this room.
Yeah.
They say 1 in 4. That's
I don't believe that.
Oh, I don't either. That's
No.
what's reported. What's
Yeah.
not reported. So
Yeah.
I think it's closer to 1 in 3.
Yeah.
Maybe even closer to 1 in 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look around and you put that into perspective, whether you're on a plane, in a restaurant, wherever, it starts. You start to think about it a little bit differently. Like, oh my gosh, it affects this many people
Yeah.
that I can see. Again, when it's and it's in front of you and it's real, it's hard to ignore. Even
Yeah.
if you were to put down pieces of paper, it's not the same. 'Cause
No.
it's not. It doesn't make it real.
We become removed from the emotional
Yes.
connection part of it.
Yes.
So how does your husband, how does he support you in this?
Oh, he every time I want to quit and give up, he's like, you can go take a day or an hour or whatever you need
Yeah.
to do, but you're not done.
Arrows are always pulled back before they're shot forward. Just remember that.
Yes. I do, it has affected us.
Yeah,
I mean, it
I'm
really
sure.
has. And I'm so raw and real. I don't like to sugarcoat it. I mean, we've
You
gone
can't.
through a lot.
You
But
can't.
people try. I mean, they try to. Like,
Yeah.
marriage is hard under any
Oh, yeah.
circumstances.
I agree.
Yeah, and having 5 kids is hard, and
Yes.
he works more than full time. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a nuclear powerhouse mechanic, and so he does have a great job that allows us to live the life that we live.
Right.
But also,
Yep.
that's where his time, a lot of it goes. But
Exactly.
he would do anything for me to further this mission, and I think it's for 2 reasons. Or I say with confidence, it's for 2 reasons. The first one is, I'm living this. So naturally, my family is living this.
Right.
My children have been affected today because of the actions that my perpetrator is still taking.
It's generational.
Yes.
Yeah.
But just again, I don't talk about a lot, but I had to pull my kids out of the church that we were attending for 10 years because they knowingly allowed a sex offender around children.
Wow. Wow.
They allowed this offender to be on the soccer field with
Wow.
girls. They allowed him to attend the father-daughter dance. They wrote him character references.
You're kidding.
They allowed him to host a neighborhood group. And
Wow.
so how I cannot have my children in an environment
No.
where the
No.
higher up people, the senior pastor, the board members, and the athletic sports director,
They knew.
they're allowing a registered sex offender to bypass every safety protocol and do these things. That affected my kids.
But your hard line has to be your hard line, because if
Oh,
it's not,
we don't
you're not
negotiate
walking the walk.
safety.
Yeah.
No.
you can't.
And for people,
Say that again.
we do not negotiate safety.
Perfect.
Period.
Yeah.
We don't ever negotiate safety.
Yep.
That was a hard line, and that was very difficult. And my kids, I mean, they hate me for it. Like
I'm sure.
they miss their church. We've gone to other churches, and it's not fair. And I know, you
Yeah.
know what, that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. It's not fair.
Right.
But my job as your mother is to protect you.
Yep.
And then people come, well, there's offenders everywhere. You can go to Disneyland. You're right. We'll never be bulletproof.
No.
And we're never going to know. But this is not. They were negligent. They knowingly allowed a sex offender
Yeah.
to bypass everything.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
No, when you know, you have to do something about it.
And that would be like a school, a principal, a board member of the school, an athletic director, knowingly, it's no different. Like,
Yeah.
we have all these things in place. It doesn't matter what you have in place when you allow an offender to bypass.
You open the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this too carried over to where I intended to send them to high school.
Okay.
The laws were broken. School had no idea that this offender was all over their campus and his kids were going there. And
Wow.
the church character references, knowing he was an offender, for the kids to attend this private school. And at that point, like, I'm sorry, kids. Like,
Yeah.
we're done. Like,
Yeah,
and
they'll thank you later.
they
though.
will.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it makes it so
Yeah.
hard because I'm just trying to protect them.
That's
as
the
best
ripple
as I
effect,
can.
unfortunately.
Yeah. And so, but my husband knows all. So when I say it's literally affecting my children
Mm-hmm.
today, it does. It impacts them and it affects them. So he's like, no, this is what we're living. We have to fight for other people.
Right.
And clearly, God, there is no explanation, and that's how I know it's God. He's
But
like,
God.
well, that's why he's like, clearly God is continuing to pull you in this.
Yeah.
So you have to keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
If you take a break, that's fine. Cry, fine. But you have to keep going. So he is very supportive
That's
because he's
awesome.
watched us all suffer. And so he wants to do what he can
Yeah.
in his part, in his place, so that we can move forward and advance this mission.
Now, what about your parents?
They're pretty removed.
Okay.
They always have been. I can't imagine what they went through as a couple, as parents. Our lives
No.
completely fell apart. My dad left. My mom turned to pills, and it was trauma. It was all one thing after
Yeah.
another, and so when this all resurfaced in 2020, I can't imagine how they felt because it was just as pouring salt in the wound for them as it was for myself.
Right.
And also, again, I just can't relate, or I can't relate. I hope I can never relate or imagine. Here, my parents accepted a plea deal thinking they were doing the right thing.
Right,
And at the
right.
time, they did.
Right.
But they were told he would be on probation for two terms of lifetime probation.
Yeah.
So then they felt like they failed me. They were told that he would have to register as a sex offender on the public registry. Well, he's level 1, so he's protected.
He's level 1.
He's level 1.
Wow. So I meant to ask you that a little bit ago.
No, he's level 1. So
Wow.
yeah, that's why I used the 8 counts and dangerous crime against child, possession of trust. He's a level 1 sex offender, so you cannot even look him up on the public registry.
Wow.
So my parents were furious,
Yeah,
and
I
they
bet.
really felt like they were betrayed and lied to, and,
Yeah.
and they were.
And they were. I was
yeah,
gonna
they
say they
absolutely
were.
were. So they struggle with me being in the spotlight and doing these things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But not everyone handles things the same. And
Right.
so where my drive and my why is because I'm living it, where they're like, it would just be easier. Of course it's easier to walk away.
Oh, and that's what most people do.
Yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
that's not where God has called me. God has called me to continue to fight this and clearly he's called me to expose, which is exhausting. But
Yeah.
they my heart breaks for them because they never got the help they needed
Yeah.
either. And
Yeah.
they can say whatever they want. I know it deeply affects them still to this day.
Oh, how could it not? I mean,
yeah.
how, I don't understand how anything like this couldn't affect anyone that is in your immediate family.
And he was my mom's coworker too, so my mom really struggled with that. So yeah.
But it goes back to, again, building the reputation, building the rapport, the person of authority. This could never happen. And then do they believe them over their own daughter? I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah. If you saw some of these character references that my guy has, you would just be nauseated.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy.
That
That's
is
what
crazy.
they do. That's
Wow.
what they do. There was another teacher at the school. Because they didn't say my name when I turned him in. They might as well have, though. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They put out so much information. It doesn't take you long to figure
Yeah.
out who it is.
Yeah.
And if there's multiple victims, it's easier. But at the time, I was the only one. So there was a teacher who confronted my mom, and she had 5 kids, and she said, I would leave him with my kids for a week. This girl wants attention. The things
Wow.
people say, yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And so she was very pro him. And then even the day that he pled guilty because he took the plea deal, they
Right.
played the confrontation call in court. And so all these people heard it. And all
Wow.
the soccer teams stood on his behalf. The owner of the soccer club at the time, John Razan, actually bailed him out of jail, even hearing this phone call. So
Really?
you had the owner of a children's organization bailing a pedophile out of jail. Yeah.
Wow.
And he housed him for a year until he was sentenced. Almost
Wow.
a year, yeah. Yep.
That, I mean, the thing is that I understand the level of forgiveness and moving past and all those kinds of things, but when you're faced with that and you hear that,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
He admits to all of it, and
Right.
and they still stood on his side, stood on his behalf, and my mom saw that teacher a couple years later at the grocery store, and who was a colleague, and
Yeah.
she said she just left the cart and ran because she said she couldn't, it was too much, and the lady chased her, and she was just hysterical and apologized because
Wow.
she couldn't believe that she was so
Blinded?
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. And when that happens, I mean, yeah, you cut the ties.
Yeah.
You know, you cannot continue that. And,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. There's no line to where it's like a hard line.
Well, here's the thing. As a society, we have forgotten, and even as Christians,
Yeah.
we can still be accepting and forgiving
100%.
while holding people accountable with boundaries.
Yeah. You
they
have
don't.
to.
And
You
it's
have
the
to.
worst. Christians are the worst. Well, God says to forgive.
Right.
You're right, he does. God
Forgive
also,
and repent and go in a different direction.
But God also very specifically throughout the Bible addresses those who harm children and that they are better to be thrown into the ocean with a millstone around their neck
Yep.
than to harm one of his little ones.
Yeah.
He talks about it in Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Yep.
And so we have Christians that don't want to reference that piece of scripture
Right. They cherry pick it.
to hold these guys accountable.
Yeah.
And something else I've learned through this is I have lanes, right? Like
Yeah,
I like to
yeah.
think of things or boxes, however
Right.
you want to think of it. But I think of it as lanes. So I have my personal lane, my personal opinion, and my professional work lane.
Right.
I have a way that I think that pedophiles should be dealt with.
Of course. I like
On
your
my
hat.
This is never going to be reality.
No.
Like, it's never going to happen.
No.
So then I swear back
Fun to
over.
dream about.
Oh, yes, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
But, so I'm not going to be one of those people that's like, well, I'm team wood chipper, and that's the only way.
Yeah.
No, I believe it's the only solution. But, so what can we do, right? So that's not an option. So what is an option? Well, we can narrow the gaps. We're never going to be bulletproof, but we
Right.
can narrow the gaps. We can be proactive instead of reactive. We can have harsher penalties in place for these
Right.
offenders that are
Well, especially,
more
I mean, the multiple
defined.
offenders too. These guys that are
Yes.
doing, I mean, again and again, it's like, oh my gosh.
So that's, my personal versus professional where I struggle, or not where I struggle, where I balance
Right.
those two lanes. But it's staying, depending on what I'm doing, what lane I'm going to be in
Right.
for that. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's a lot.
is a lot.
That's a lot. So how do you take care of Kayleigh through all
I
this?
work out. I'm telling 75 Hard saved my life.
Yeah.
That program
Yeah.
saved my life.
Mental fortitude.
It saved my life.
Yeah.
Like I was not going to make it, and it
Yeah.
saved my life, and it taught me a lot: mental fortitude, mental discipline. Really sitting with myself and what I've been through, and I always struggle when people say, "Oh, 75 Hard, I want to lose weight and be in shape."
No.
That's not what the program is, and if that's why you're doing it, I'm going to suggest that you.
Well, they have
don't.
an end goal then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mental discipline program.
Yes.
And it's a self-reflection and an accountability thing. And I think I'm really big on accountability.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I learned to love it. And it's really become a way of life for our whole family.
Yeah.
And it's done a lot of good
No, it's
for
the best.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is, Andy Frisella is my,
Yeah.
it always makes me emotional because he'll just never know what that program has done for me. And I've
Yeah.
told him, and I hope one day I can share my full story with him.
Yeah.
But that program saved my life, and
Yeah.
that's what I do. I have learned to, I don't think that's enough. I still need to do things that
Right.
make, to find joy. But that's been hard for me as well because...
Well, it's joy in the chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because I turned my abuser in, my parents got divorced, and I was taking care of my siblings and trying to almost parent my parents from the trauma they had went through. And then I got pregnant in high school, and then I got married when I was way too young, and then had another baby, and then another baby, and then another baby, and five babies. I never found time to take care of me or what I enjoy. Yeah. And recently someone has said, "What makes you happy?" I don't know.
You don't know? The little wins.
Riding my motorcycle makes me happy. Glittery things, coffee. It's not that being a mom doesn't make me happy, because it absolutely does.
Yeah, it's a different journey.
Oh, but gosh, being a mom is, you're talking about lane switching.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
Especially, and it's so chaotic. And having all 5 in sports right now is kicking my ass.
Yeah, no, it does. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is, and I want them to be involved, and I want to be at all the things, but I'm
well, you're equipping them too,
I'm
though.
one person, and I'm like a ping pong ball, and
Yeah.
I always say if someone followed me around for an evening, they would be like, "I have whiplash."
I'm
like,
done. I'm
me
done.
too.
No,
so,
seriously.
But I am trying to learn what brings me joy and peace. I really enjoy working out. I really enjoy nature, but I need to find something that I can detach from all the work and the trauma and be
Yeah.
I'm working on being present in the moment, and it's really hard to do.
It's really hard because we either take things on that feed us or deplete us.
Yeah.
And I think that but that hard line that you're putting in for them, you have to put in for yourself
Yeah.
too. And I think we feel selfish when we do that.
Yeah.
But it's good because you're filling back up.
Yeah.
Right? You can't pour from an empty
No,
cup.
you can't. You
And,
can't.
and
it's
your
so
family
cliche,
needs
but
you.
it's
yeah.
so
No, it's true.
True.
It's true. No, it is.
so true. And then when you are a mom and you do things for yourself, those closest around you almost attack you for being selfish.
Yeah.
And it's like,
No.
well, I'm a person too. Like,
You have to.
I think when I was talking about getting involved in this and work and whatnot,
Yeah.
I think like people just viewed me as Kayleigh the mom, who did everything.
That was your
It's like,
identity.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm so much more than that. And because I did everything backwards, essentially from tradition. Well, what's tradition anymore?
was gonna say.
But you know what I mean? Like,
totally.
Because I did things backwards, I think people really struggled with, oh, she has interest. I mean, seriously, when I bought my motorcycle, people were like, what is wrong with you? Are you going through a midlife crisis? And I'm like, no, I've always wanted to ride a motorcycle.
No, it's an
It wasn't
awakening. It's an
practical.
awakening,
Like,
no.
I couldn't go ride a bike
Yeah.
when I had 5 little kids running
No.
around. Now,
Or when you were pregnant.
yeah. Now that would have been maybe a way to go into labor. I should have tried that.
Really?
But yeah. So it's you seasons and changing, and we're all doing that. But
Well, it's the should labels that are
Yeah.
put on that, you should do this, you should do this. Really?
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm called to. I'm doing what is unveiled to you.
and when you're growing and people around you aren't,
Yep.
they view it as a selfish.
It's a threat because and I always tell people this. The reason why that's a threat is that you have an emotional contract with them that you just broke.
Yeah.
And that's why people, especially like young kids, when I work with Gen Z a lot, their friends drop like flies
Yeah.
when they start to find that's my target, right? And then it's like, well, you either come with me or I'm going to have to leave you behind. And when you do that, you shine a light on things that they perceive. It's not a label that you put on them. It's an
Yeah.
internal dialogue.
Yeah.
And so and a lot of times the people closest to you will shut you down the fastest.
Yeah.
And so and that's why God's put this on your heart. You owe no one an explanation,
And I think too, social media doesn't help. But
Yeah, no.
we're always we're chasing an unrealistic reality,
Right.
and very few and far are actually real and raw. And
Yeah.
then even if they do share their struggles, people are like, "Oh, you just want attention, or you're just
You can't
kidding."
win.
Yeah, you
You
can't.
can't win.
But with all that being said, if we would learn as individuals to step into our purpose and not try to step into another person's purpose or another
It's already
individual's,
taken.
yeah,
Yeah.
we would be so much more successful on our journeys.
Well, it would be more authentic to where you're not putting on someone else's covering. And
Yeah.
we talk about even like that, like with being a believer in faith, and that it's like God's whole thing is for you to get to know Him.
Yeah.
And through Him, He reveals your purpose.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people can't necessarily navigate
Yeah.
because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
or their pretty little life is built a certain way, and then it's like, that's all going to shit.
And they want the affirmation. We
Yes.
crave that affirmation that we can see, feel, hear,
Yeah.
anything, and we don't get that from God. It's a faith thing. It's a faith
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
And so when you are stepping into your purpose that He has, put you in,
He's prepared you for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
but you don't. You wish. I wish so badly sometimes God would just. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
can you send me a text? Like, but you don't get, and that's a faith
No,
thing. It's a
yeah.
faith. It's a faith battle.
By
It's part of
faith,
your
by not by sight.
Yes.
Yep.
But that's really hard to embrace that
It is.
fully and
It
to be present and feel that. And I do struggle with. I think we all do.
Yeah, no, we do. I mean, and anybody tells you that they don't, it's full of crap because, I mean, like my whole thing, like the last year, I wanted to read the Bible every morning, 5:30 or 6 in the morning, non-negotiable,
Yeah.
and being in the Word every single day. And even though I would read before, it was not what it is now. It's non-negotiable,
Yeah.
and it does. You do start to have like a sense of calm as
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I can't see where this is going, but there's a door opened. And if you guide me through this, I'm going to go all in. If you shut the door, then point me in a different
Yeah.
direction. And you do start, and it's like I always do the prayer that it's like, is this my heart's desire or His desire for me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, open the door that no man can shut, and shut doors that no man can open.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the only way I think you can discern.
Yeah, and I pray a lot for discernment, but something I think I say it hourly is, God, please open my eyes to the things that you need me to see and to feel. And God, please guard my heart and my mind from the things that
And
you
he's
don't.
doing those things, so he is answering you.
Yeah. I just, man, a text
It just
would
be a lot
so
easier.
nice.
Go, Kayleigh.
But yeah, and I mean, not negotiables, I think. So I get up at 3:30 almost every morning and go to the gym. It's not.
Yep.
I need to. And it sounds insane. Some
No.
days I'm like,
I used to do the same thing. I was at a 4 a.m.er.
But it sets my day up for success. I have 5 kids. Do you know how many things happen throughout the day with 5 kids?
If you don't get it done, then you won't get it done.
And then it makes me feel better. And when I don't do those things, I feel myself slipping into a darker place, mentally, physically, however. And so it's that discipline, though, and that no one else can do that for me. It's me.
No.
But it builds me and makes me feel better.
Yeah. And not only that, too, Kay, the cool thing about what you just said about getting up in the morning and doing that, the season that you're in right now, you're equipped to do that. There'll come a time to maybe where you won't want to do that, or something else will change.
Yeah.
For women, because I told you that the one book that it's addressing all this.
Mm-hmm.
And women, you get to a place of realizing that you look back when your kids were little, and you're like, how the hell did I do that?
Yeah.
How, right? You do. You're like, what the heck? I mean, I look at moms now and I'm like, trust me, this is it's the season of adrenaline is what I always say.
It is.
It is.
That's
you're
what
good.
you're surviving off of is
You are.
adrenaline.
You are. And then every season, so if you live in the season, you're being prepared for the next one.
Yeah.
But we're so focused on what's coming next, we forget this. So
Yeah.
it's like when you said being in the moment and being present for
Yeah.
yourself, and that 3:30 in the morning is probably your solitude.
It is.
So it's good.
Very rarely sometimes my kids will stroll in and, come downstairs and I'm like, you're supposed to be sleeping.
Go back to bed.
Yeah. But it is. I go to the gym, I come home, whether I pick up coffee or I make coffee, I usually do my whatever Bible study I'm doing in the morning in that uninterrupted quiet time.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to find anymore.
It's huge.
So, and well, don't get me wrong, there are some people texting me that early because they know I'm up. But for
Yeah.
the most part,
Yeah.
I don't. Well, I'm not going to answer, but you know what?
Yeah.
It's just different than knowing you kind of know at 8 o'clock, like your phone's like loose cannon. Then
Yeah,
anybody
no,
can
you can't.
call.
I mean, my
So,
Bible study teacher, she's always like the quiet time in the morning first. I mean,
Yeah.
no notifications. My phone's off, and it's
Yeah.
just like that moment. And then you're in the Word, and then your prayer,
Yeah.
and then it's like, okay, I've got my armor on. Let's get going.
Because if you're doing it later in the day, specifically like reading scripture
quiet your
or
mind.
Or a Bible study, you're trying to read and you're like, oh shoot, it's almost 11. I got to do this or whatever. Like you can't.
can't.
So
You can't.
I'm big on that as
Yeah.
well.
No, you have to be, and I think it goes back to discipline. Like when you were bringing up the 75 hard, it goes back to the commitments you make to yourself are the ones that you have to keep because those are the ones that are going to actually move the needle.
Yeah.
The ones that we keep to our family and our friends and everybody else, yes, we want to keep a commitment because it's our word, right? But we always let ourselves down.
Yeah.
Rather than going, wait a minute, if I do this, it's like with the analogy, with the oxygen mask, put it on yourself first. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, it's true.
Yeah.
Because I can't do anything for anyone else if I've got nothing.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked that question. Like, you're doing so much for so many people that you won't even know, right? I mean, it's like these things are being talked about in a room that you haven't even entered yet, which is important.
I will tell you that is, so we like to see, oh my gosh, what's the word? Process of things or, things.
Due process?
Yeah. Well, no, we like to see the process of things.
Oh, okay,
happening,
gotcha.
Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're restoring a car,
Yeah.
Even if you see something little, you can see the process of it happening.
It's tangible.
Yes. And so I will fully admit that not being able to see the fruits of my labor and the process of it is a little hard sometimes because sometimes I do feel like, why am I continuing to put myself through this hell? It feels like it's for nothing.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
not.
it's not.
No.
And that's a whole thing I'm writing about in my book is knowing
Good.
versus feeling.
Yeah.
I know it's not for nothing,
Right.
but most days it feels like it's
Well,
for
you're
nothing.
You're seeding something for a harvest that you probably won't see.
Yeah.
It's kind of like raising kids, right? It's like we're
Yeah.
we're seeding our kids, and it's
Yeah.
like we're not going to see the harvest.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think that the driver of that is, like I said, it's your why. You're becoming what you needed, the protection part of
Yeah.
it. So let me ask you this: leave everybody with your top 3 things that you think that will change what you hope to see change from your work. I know you said before the 3 things, but what do you think from you specifically? Like the work that you're doing besides Kayleigh's Law?
Yeah. Honestly, hope is probably the biggest one.
Okay.
I hope to leave people feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
And I hope when they look at me, they feel hope that they too can make changes, because it only takes an ember to start a whole blaze.
1,000%.
And I had no idea what I was doing when I started this. I just knew I was doing something. And so I think too, again, social media, we look and we see,
Right.
oh, these people have it made and it looks so easy. Yeah, it might look like that, but I was actually, I responded to Andy Frisella and I were going back and forth. People, to be a winner, essentially, to get somewhere, and I'm sure you feel like this,
Yeah.
and people don't see it. You have to have the tenacity to be in it,
Yep.
go through it, not quit and not give up.
Right.
But winning is obstacles that consist of failing
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
huge.
then overcoming. And then maybe, just maybe, you get to win at one point. And so I feel if people knew the obstacles and the amount of times things have failed,
Yeah.
even to get one thing across that winning line that I've gone through, I think they would feel hopeful. I don't know how they couldn't. It's very,
Yeah.
David
Yeah.
and Goliath, right?
Right. Right.
And if you're not David in your story going up against Goliath,
Yeah.
I would encourage you to take a step back and figure out where can you be David in your life?
Yeah.
And what's the Goliath that you want to go up against?
No, it's so good.
And then too, in that, whatever tool God has given you, the tools that you need.
Specifically.
Yes.
Yes.
And how do you think David felt when he showed up? With a rock.
Exactly.
I mean, that's how I feel when I show up at the Capitol. I'm like, I'm here. I'm nobody. I'm by myself.
Right.
But I'm here.
But God.
Knowing
Yes.
that God has already given me whatever tools that
Yeah.
He needed me. Not that I think I should have, that He
Right.
knows I should have.
He's equipped you.
To fight that battle. And so hope would probably be the biggest thing,
Good.
to believe that change can happen.
Yeah.
It
I
can.
think that's the biggest thing is people start to, they get hopeless
Yeah.
or they see so many things defeated. And the average person, we work on mental toughness in here, and it's like the average person, once they've tried one or two times, they stop.
Yeah.
And it's just like you that's why I said you've been given this because you've been equipped to and prepared
Yeah.
for the long haul.
Yeah.
Most people can't, and hope is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I talk to, oh, I'm going to help you, oh, I know this
Oh.
legislator, and I don't get excited about anything in regards
Me
to
neither.
that anymore, but someone eventually pulls through, so
Yeah.
it's like if I gave up because the first person didn't respond,
Right.
I wouldn't be anywhere.
Well, if you're waiting on somebody else to give you permission, you might as well stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for those two bills that the governor vetoed this year, guess what we're doing next session? We're drafting them, knowing damn good and well she's probably going to veto them
Yeah.
again, but we have no intention on slowing down.
No.
We need to expose what's actually going on and bringing truth. But
It's such an insidious thing too.
Yeah.
It's every area of our lives and our culture right now.
it's so bad.
It is.
So I mean, but knowing that we're going to go and fight, give this all of our time, energy, and effort, and that there's a 99.9% chance it's not going to, like, we're going to fail in it. It's
Right.
not going to be a win.
Right.
That'll be another fail line, not a win. Another
Right.
fail on the chart.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you stop.
No, you
And so for
can't.
people, you can't just, when the going gets tough, you can't just quit. I mean, I love the story of the buffalo.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally have like the card in my purse with it on it. Right?
I
Like,
tell that all
be
the time.
a buffalo.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's really hard to be a buffalo.
It is, but I think too one of the great analogies is like if you're a miner and you're like going after gold, right, and you're looking at it, from where you are, you can't see through it. You
Yeah.
switch the lens and you're literally this far from the
Yes.
other side. If you would have just been your
Yeah.
toilsome and everything,
Yeah.
you would have given up.
Well, yeah, and things don't. I think so many like people, right? And you hear all these stories, right?
Yeah.
Like, Jelly Roll is like the first thing that comes to my
Yeah.
mind. But like, look at how long he was going, or even Morgan Wallen. And
Yeah.
my kid just went to both their concerts, so I think that's why they're fresh on my mind. But
Yeah.
like, how many songs and albums and things until like that one thing? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to quit every day. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted.
I bet.
But like my background on my work phone is an overnight success is 10 years in the making. Keep going.
I'd say 20.
Yeah, 10, 20, I don't know.
No,
where I
that's
found
my
the 10.
favorites. I think it was like Walton, with
Yeah.
Walmart. They're like, yeah, it was an overnight success. Took me 20 years.
Yeah.
Nobody sees the
Yeah.
20 years. They see the highlight reels.
Yeah. And
you know?
and two, people want to show all their successes, and that's where social media is a damper and it's harmful.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're like, oh, well, they're successful, I'm not.
But like what you said, though, if they show the failures, then it's reframed into you want attention.
Yeah.
If you show the real path, then everybody's like, well, why are you doing that? You know, but there's always going to be judgment, right?
Well, look at Noah. I mean,
You're building an ark.
look at Noah. What are you doing? Why are you building that? So I think when I want to encourage people to whatever your purpose is, you're going to have people who want you to sink, and you're going to have people that want you to swim.
Yeah.
Just period. It doesn't matter. And you're going to have people who motivate you and encourage you, and people who make it their life mission to bring you down. You just have to keep going in that, and stand firm in your purpose and your belief.
No, I love that.
And I don't know if that was 3 things, but that's what.
No,
I
that's
got.
good. That's good. I would trust me. That's good. Thank you so much. I
gosh,
appreciate
thank
it,
you.
and we will do this again too.
Yes.
As a follow up, because I think it's important for people to get to know you, understand, and then also if any of you guys want to get in touch with Kayleigh, so her website is becauseyoustillmatter.com, and again, we'll get all this stuff in the show notes. The Kayleigh Kozak, and it's Kayleigh on Instagram as well as TikTok, and you're pretty active on both.
Yeah.
And then Twitter, we're not sure of.
Well, Twitter X is.
Exactly,
They
the X.
deleted my account, but I do have it. It's the Kayleigh Kozak as well.
So yeah, and we're gonna put all this in there, and if there's anything else that you think anyone needs to know, we'll put that in there as well. But thank you so much for listening, you guys. Leave us a great review, and we will get back with Kayleigh and touch base and see how she's doing in a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the TLM Nation podcast. I hope you've learned something new and useful. I hope you're willing to ask questions and to seek truth, and be bold in that. Please subscribe, drop us 5 stars and a great review, and we'll see you next time.